Well, Dave, thanks for joining me today to talk about this very important topic that is coming up in for the city of Boise. I appreciate you making the time.
Well, I'm glad to be here. Thanks for asking me. You know,
Absolutely, yeah. You're a wealth of knowledge about zoning and things going on in the city. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your background briefly and your work with Reject Boise Upzone?
okay, well, I'm a native Boisean. I grew up here, went to Hawthorne, East, Boise High, some Boise State. I left for 16 years and came back in 2002, got into real estate and got involved with the Vista Neighborhood Association. So I've been with been a realtor for 20 years, probably been involved with the Vista Neighborhood Association just as long. A lot of development processes, um, working with the schools, et cetera, being involved in local issues with the city. Was involved with Boise Working Together, who brought in the library initiative to ballot. I was involved in dealing with the F-35 and lately been president of Boise Working Together, who did bring the library initiative to ballot. We stayed together, and over the last couple of years, we've been kind of helping different neighborhood associations with some development issues, districting, and now we're into Reject Boise Upzone.
Yeah, and I found out about this Upzone project that the city has been working on for 3 years, unbeknownst to me, through you. And thank you very much for making me aware of it. And now then I'm going out and educating people on what's going on. And I'm finding the majority of people I talk to by far don't know about it. Why do you think people don't know about it, Dave?
Well, it's just the way society is. We get deluged with emails. We kind of pick our poisons, I guess. We hang around, when you're online, social media, you have your little clique that you hang around with. News has got so contentious that a lot of people just turn it off. In the Vista Neighborhood Association and the Library Initiative, we just found that no matter what the city did, most of the people just did not know what was going on.
Yeah, that
You
makes
know,
sense.
and that's what we're dealing with now. Is you've almost got to knock on their door or pound on their head a little bit to get their attention. And once they know about things going on, usually they're not too happy with it.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm finding as I'm volunteering, spreading the word. You know, let me ask you this. First of all, let's start with how do you describe upzoning to someone who's not familiar with that term?
Well, upzoning is changing current land use status or land use in a city or region and adding densities, increasing heights, allowed uses, just putting more development into the same square mile. Let's say, put it that way. They
Mm-hmm.
just really want to increase the use of the land.
Gotcha.
And most people don't understand what that means.
Yeah. Well, I don't, and like I said, as I'm finding working a little bit with you guys is, yeah, they don't understand the ramifications of that. And that's a great question. What are the ramifications of that for, if you could kind of describe for a homeowner who owns a single family home, and then maybe also talk about ramifications for people in the rental market?
Well, when I first really started to understand what they were proposing, I realized it was all about production, you know, building new housing, developments, apartments, all of that on a massive scale. So in a neighborhood, it just changes the use of your neighborhood, what it looks like, what it feels like. Um, and I don't think people buy homes in areas that are unpredictable. Working 20 years as a real estate agent, when people buy homes, they like stability. They buy a home obviously what their budget will allow, but also in areas that they like. They like the streetscape, the surrounding homes where they're at. And now the city is proposing changing all of that dramatically. And they haven't really come out and asked our permission. They've just kind of decided they're going to do this. And if we don't stand up and voice our opinions, they will. There is a prevailing attitude that just adding more units is somehow going to build our way into affordability. And what'll happen is just the opposite. New construction is never less expensive than what it's replacing. Remodeling is never less expensive than what's happening. And we've seen a lot of that displacement already when developers buy an old apartment complex and completely remodel it. They evict people that are paying very low rents and bring it up to market rate, which are dramatically more expensive. The project on 11th and River is just a prime example. Tearing down 4 older fourplexes to put in a new apartment complex. We're getting a lot more units, but market rate units is $1,700 a month. And the 16 families that are paying $1,000 a month are kind of just out of luck. They got to scramble and figure out where they're going to go.
Yeah, casualties. Your sound cut out. Are you?
Okay.
There we go. There we go.
But if they don't have the money to make up the new rent rolls, well, they're going to leave town.
Yeah.
They're going to have to go to Caldwell or Emmett or someplace, even Mountain Home, because Napa's not that much less expensive than Boise.
Yeah, and that's what I'm finding too. Is when they in the cities that I'm studying, as I'm getting a crash course in upzoning, so I can be part of the solution here. Yeah, it leads to gentrification and pushes people out, and then so that's one casualty. Then the next casualty is, like you said, construction prices are always going up, so whatever they build is going to be more expensive. What do you say, what do you say to people that say, oh, well, how are we going to grow if we don't upzone? Where are we going to put the people? What do you say to people that have bought into the narrative and the marketing that the city's putting out that we need this upzone?
Well, as a community, we really need to decide how fast we want to grow. Boise's been very popular and growing basically out of control. And it's hard to figure out how to control growth. But if you don't control growth, you don't keep up with infrastructure, you don't keep up with schools, fire station, police, all of that. I mean, the new growth just does not pay for itself quick enough to accommodate those things. So while the proponents say density is the answer to everything, in my experience and knowledge of what the older neighborhoods are, there's a lot of issues within the neighborhoods on infrastructure, lack of sidewalks, lack of, streets set up for pedestrian and bicycle traffic, which density is supposed to promote. It's just not as easy and simple as that.
Yeah.
Sure, we need to grow, but we also need to grow in a way that respects the people that are here rather than just shoving them out of the way.
Yeah. And, part of what as I dig into this and my background in architecture and, environmental psychology, what I'm finding is, we have grown fast, and it's unfortunate that a city grows as fast as Boise does. And, there are problems that come along with that, but the process appears to be working. It takes a little more thought and getting together and coming together. And one of the big aspects that I'm seeing that would happen if this goes through is it would do away with that process, remove citizens' voice and residents' voice from the planning process. And just like you said, open up a whole chunk of variables that would add fuel to the fire, as you say.
Again, when I first figured out what they were doing with this, it was all about production, increasing densities, reducing lot sizes to promote lot splits, allowing fourplexes, even incentivizing up to 12 units onto a residential lot. So that's really throwing fuel on a city that's already one of the fastest growing cities in the country. And that just doesn't make sense to me. I mean, how are we supposed to keep our character, what the city of Boise is, when you grow like that? And it really disrespects the people that are here, unless, of course, you're live in a protected area like a historic district or new subdivision to where you're not going to be bothered as much.
I'm really glad you mentioned that, circling back to what you said earlier, that people want the stability. They buy in certain neighborhoods for stability, and they plant their roots there, right? They raise their families there. I look at, people throw single family residents under the bus, but the reality is single family homes are the bedrock of a society. Like it or not, they add to the tax base. You raise family and kids there. It's a launching ground for everything else. And you mentioned people buy in certain places for the stability. I know that certain neighborhoods, there are, with written into the deed is what you can and can't do on your property, and it's attached to the deed, isn't it? And it protects them.
Yeah, though it's CC&Rs within a subdivision. So, when a developer builds a new subdivision, he puts CC&Rs on that subdivision to protect what he is building, to keep his investment safe, because he doesn't want manufactured homes and stuff like that to go in when he's building a more upscale project. And lenders require it as well to protect their investment when they're helping fund developing that subdivision. That's good in a way, but also when the city takes advantage of that and decides it's going to apply like new zoning laws to areas that are unprotected, then you create issues, heavy gentrification. I mean, like we talked about, mentioned earlier, is that when you redevelop an area, those people there get displaced. And where do they get to go? It doesn't, that's not fair, really, in my opinion. It's like changing the rules on a card game after you bet.
Well, and it's the nature of politics, right? I mean, hey, we're going to set these people up good over here, but for every one of those, there's 3 of those that got kicked out, right? Or another one that got kicked out. And will the zoning code rewrite, if it goes through, override CC&Rs, and will it take precedence over what the CC&R is and allow this density to go into those neighborhoods?
It won't. The state law protects CC&Rs within a subdivision. The city now has specific plans for a lot of the new planned communities, historic districts, large lot overlays. Almost all of those areas are protected from the application of the new zoning laws. In some instances, some of them will apply, but overall, they're protected. And of course, a large portion of the north end, especially with the historic district and the large lot areas they have, up in the foothills, these density requirements won't apply up there. But it'll really hit the bench in West Boise very hard. I was running some sold analysis and using the lot sizes that will be targeted with this new zoning code. And the bench in West Boise absorbed 70% of the impact.
Wow.
That's huge.
Wow. Yeah, and that's what I'm finding too. Are they deliberately written to kind of make that happen? I mean, would you say that? Is that unfair? Am I putting you?
I have to assume that is specifically written that way. They have so much data, so many resources available to them. When you see something come out in code, you have to assume that there is a lot of analysis that have gone behind it. When you add in what they're doing just with lot splits, then you add in incentives, transit corridors. It is heavily targeting the bench in West Boise for this growth, while other parts of town just get to avoid it.
Yeah. Yeah. What are you finding? What are you finding in your journey as you go forward here? I mean, I know you're spreading the message. Are you finding people are receptive? Are they concerned, or what's your general takeaway from talking with people so far?
Well, it's amazing how many people really don't know anything about it, how angry they are when they start to understand what is going on, and immediately they want to get involved. And we've done a great grassroots effort, with emails, social media, advertising with our yard, promoting with our yard signs, because, we're not getting a fair shake with the media. So for the number of people that we're getting involved, there is going to be a lot of angry people this fall talking about it.
Yeah. I also want to get to action steps that people can take to get involved and make their voice heard before we wrap up. But before we do that, will you share some of the things you've learned studying what's happened in other parts of the country? You've done upzones. You talked a little bit about Houston to me. I know you've talked about these other places. Share some of the things for people who don't know how this can affect them. And also what happened in Houston. You mentioned they got that reversed. Talk about those things.
So 3 cities that I've looked at, Austin, Texas, Atlanta, and Vancouver, British Columbia. Atlanta, they passed it. Their city council passed it. And then the neighborhood associations got together and rescinded it because they just did not like how it changed brought density into nicely wooded neighborhoods. They decided, no, we're going to against it. Tim Keene was there at that time. And one thing that they used to rescind it was the idea of using COVID numbers to drive that kind of policy, which is what the city of Boise has done with their housing needs analysis.
Can you explain what a COVID number is?
Well, the COVID pandemic just caused a massive amount of relocation across the country. People realized they could work from home because, employers sent everybody home to work because they didn't want them in the office spreading COVID. People kind of go, well, I can work from home. Well, why am I living here? Why don't I go somewhere else? So we saw a huge surge in demand for housing, price escalation. I mean, we're appreciating it 10 to 15% a year. And all of a sudden, areas like Star and Eagle were going to 30, 40% appreciation. But it was a temporary surge. And we shouldn't be making long-term decisions based on that kind of data. That's just not accurate. Austin, they did the same thing. They passed it. And then over the next 2 years, citizens started to realize what it meant in their neighborhoods, and they sued the city, and after 5 years of litigation, got it canceled. And I would hate to see that happen here. I mean, if we're going to pass this thing, let's just get it right the first time. Take the time to get it right. Mm-hmm. Vancouver has been heavily promoting density for a long time. And one of their planners has come out and realized that I have to change track here. I was wrong. Density does not bring affordability. Vancouver increased their density 6-fold, and they are the most expensive place to live in Canada. So he is now trying to figure out exactly what do we do about affordability? How do we correct it? You can even look all over California. It's not working. They've been changing zoning laws there for years. Prices are skyrocketing. And you ask the proponents, of course, you never do enough. You have to give the
Yeah.
developers more. And somehow they'll just build cheap homes, but they won't. It just
Yeah.
doesn't work that way.
Well, and the interesting thing is because I did some studying on traffic design and flow back in the day, and the conclusion that traffic planners and road planners came to is if you build more lanes, you just have more problem. Like more lanes doesn't solve the problem. Would you say, based on what you know about this, is this a similar principle? Building more
It kind of
houses won't solve the problem?
it exactly. Um, Density for a city that's growing will eventually help with some issues, but it does create other issues. It's not going to solve affordability. What I think we have to realize as a society now is that big cities, popular big cities, are unaffordable for a lot of people. The only way to bring affordability into them is to subsidize them either through philanthropy, taxpayer subsidies, federal tax credits, but there's a limit to what you can do with that. There's only so many funds available to help with that. Just building and handing the keys over to the developers makes them a lot of money, gives some tax revenue to the city, but the citizens don't really gain anything.
Yeah, that's kind of what I'm seeing too. How can people, well, first of all, talk about how they can learn more, point them to some websites, and I'll also put that in the description, but and also maybe how can they get involved to be part of the process?
Well, they can go to rejectboiseupzone.org, register on our website so we can reach out to you when we do events or we have news. If you want help to get involved in like writing a letter or something, ask for it. And we have people that have volunteered to help people write letters. That way we can customize a letter to a person's concerns. They can Google Boise zoning code rewrite and get the city's take on it. They will have they're marketing a product to you. We're trying to show people what it means on the street level, what the impact is, what it looks like. And it's an eye opener for most people. But on something this important, don't sit on the sidelines. Don't wait till it's going up next door to you. Get involved now and give it your best shot and go from there.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I'll put those links in the description down below. Any last thoughts, urging people to kind of, you've told me the same thing. Hey, don't wait till this thing goes in to get pissed off, get get involved now, um,
Over the years, I've had big arguments with the city, and you can make a difference. It just takes effort. You can't just send one email and expect to make big change. It takes time and effort to bring about change. But things are important. I got angry and involved because it's my home, my street, my neighborhood, and I don't like what they have planned for it. So I'm going to do what I can to change it. Maybe, win or lose, I'm going to give it my best and see what I can do. A lot of people may not want to take the time, but they'll complain on Facebook. Don't wait until complaining on Facebook doesn't solve anything. We have a very active, concerned group of people that are helping organize this. There's a lot of information out there available at your fingertips right now on the website, on the Facebook page. Plenty of opportunity just to raise the discussion. Order a yard sign, print some flyers, give them to your neighbors. We have that one-page flyer on our website that, it covers the key issues. This is not creating affordable housing in any numbers. It's not solving the issues that it claims that it's going to. So
Yeah. Well, and
it's
you
our
bring up
city.
it is our city, and you bring up a good point. I think, and that's why I as well urge people to get out and get involved and write the letters to the mayor and city council and spread that word, because you're right. I think we sometimes spend too much time on social media, but we got to get into the real world and start, making our voice heard.
Yep, and we're having great success. I mean, right now on our Thursday event where we're going to watch Zoned Out, which is a video the residents of Austin, Texas made about their experiences, and our panel discussion, we've got over 80 reservations now, and that's far more than any of the events the city has held. So there's a lot of concerned people out there. We're a big city. We've got a lot to talk about, and we're not getting much help from the media, so we have to do it ourselves.
Yeah. Well, and I tell people too that in many ways, I feel Boise is fortunate in some regard, to be able to have the ability to see what's happened in those other places, the Vancouvers, the Atlantas, the Austin, and not go down the same road and make those mistakes.
Exactly. We're small, almost all those cities addressed those things when they were really big. Boise's really a small city, it's a pretty big city for Idaho, but 235,000 people is not a huge city. And we have an opportunity to get it right. And, some areas of Boise, density and parking should be different than others. You go out to the southwest Boise, it should be different than it is downtown. But this really puts a blanket and treats every area the same. In a lot of ways, not on everything, because like I mentioned earlier, certain areas are definitely targeted versus others.
Mm-hmm. Looks like we got about another
to be talking about. If we're having a discussion and a debate, it means we care and we're trying to make things better.
Yeah. Looks like we got about another 10 minutes here or so. So do you think that's what happened in Austin, is that the people just didn't get involved in the process, and when, like you said, they didn't get involved in the process, and then it went rolled out, they hated it? Do you think that's what happened to them?
I think that the city came out and with a marketing plan and decided they were going to do it. And, the proponents of it just said, oh, it's a great thing. It's going to change everything for us. It's going to make things easier. But they forgot to really ask about the people that were living there now. This is about the people that want to come here in the future, which is important, but we can't just ignore the people that are here now. We need to, they matter too. My home, I care about my home. I care about my city. I wish the city cared more about me.
I couldn't have said it better myself. When things like this happen, you think, okay, well, did you ask any residents who have been contributing members to the city for 5, 10, 15, 20, or life? It's kind of a slap in the face.
That's exactly how I felt once I realized what this was proposing. And it made me mad. I was angry. Said, well, I'm only one person, but I'm not going to just lay down and take it. I'll do what I can to fight it and change it and hopefully do some good.
Yeah. So, well, like I said, I mean, you caught me a few years ago and educated me, and I'm thankful that you did. So thank you. And now I'm, seeing what's happening and fired up about it, so thank you.
It takes people like yourself that care, because it does take effort, but in the end, it's worth it. It just is. We got to fight to make a better city, and we can't just, Boise working together is about holding local government accountable to the people. And that's what we try to do. And that's what we're trying to do here is just say, hey, wait a minute. There's another side to this, and let's hear it. Let's take the time to talk this out and not just hammer this thing through. And sometimes the city doesn't like that. They don't like to be challenged.
Mm-mm. No, they don't. Yeah. Well, Dave, I appreciate you making the time to talk with me. I know this is going to be beneficial for people to help bring them up to speed and get them in the know.
One last thing too is I forgot to mention is that we are starting a petition to delay the final approval of this until we have a new city council fully elected by district. That'll be happening this fall. So it'd be January, February or so before they approve it. It does not look good on this administration to try to force this through right before we're having such a big vote.
I'm really glad you mentioned that because, there are so many factors that, that got me involved and said, hey, I'm going to go fully in and stop this thing if I can. But that's one of them. Yeah, the DIS 2023 redistricting. So how is it now in the last few minutes that we've got here? How is it now? How are the city council people represented now in the community, and how will it change?
Well, the last election elected 3 city councilors by district, and then there's 3 at large. Now, 2 of them have resigned for various reasons. So right now we have 3 districts that have not had district representatives elected to council. That's districts 2, 3, and 4, which is Southeast Boise, the Bench, and West Boise. And those are the areas that are going to bear 70 to 80% of the impact of this thing. So it's really important that we have the opportunity to elect district representatives that are going to vote the will of the people. Make this an election issue, and let's discuss this and see how it goes. I would be surprised if it passed in its current version, but I don't really want to. I would like to see something productive being done with all this effort. So,
yeah,
let's keep talking about it.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I'm glad you brought that city council issue up. I think it's a big part of the problem here in my mind.
Yeah, well, standing out in front of Treeport for 3 days gathering signatures, there's a lot of people that are concerned about that, and that caught people's attention. That just it makes sense to take the time. We're about 3 years into this now. There's no reason to rush it right now. And if they do rush it, there's a reason to rush it for them, not the people.
I agree. We've seen time and again what happens when government on the national level or the local level urges us to rush something. And as rational, thoughtful people know, when you rush things, you're going to make mistakes. It's just how it goes.
That's it. Unintended consequences. And when you have a 611-page document like this, there's a lot of unintended consequences in it.
Yeah.
It's unavoidable. It's not like, they don't know what they're doing. It's just that there's unintended consequences that they won't see until it starts going up or the permit comes in, the application to develop comes in. They go, wow, we didn't plan on that happening.
Scary.
It's part of the process.
Yeah. Well, Dave, thank you. I really appreciate it. And I look forward to chatting with you again.
Okay. Thanks, Mark. I appreciate this. Thanks for all your help.
Absolutely.
Okay.